They say the worst day of your life should never be your wedding day. Mine was. I stood at the altar in a silk dress I paid for under lights I arranged in a venue I booked. But the man waiting for me wasn't mine anymore. Not after what I'd just seen. 10 minutes before the ceremony, I found my fiancé and my bridesmaid, his childhood friend, in a locked dressing room. His shirt unbuttoned, her lipstick smeared, their whispers sharper than any vow. They didn't see me. But I saw enough, and I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I walked down the aisle anyway, because if they were going to betray me in my dress under my roof with my trust, then I was going to destroy them right where they stood. I walked down the aisle like I always imagined, back straight, chin-high, bouquet in hand. But this time, I wasn't walking toward a promise. I was walking toward a reckoning. Nathan stood under the arch, smiling like the man I thought he was. Brittany was off to the side in her blush-colored gown, eyes, glassy hands, clutching my veil like it weighed more than her guilt. The music swelled. Guests rose, phones lifted, and I smiled too. But not for the photos, for the moment. The moment I took control. When I reached the altar, the officiant asked the usual question, "Who gives this woman away?" My father opened his mouth, but I beat him to it. "No one," I said, "because I'm not being given away, I'm taking myself back." A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. Nathan's smile flickered. Brittany took a step back. I handed my bouquet to my maid of honor, turned to face the guests, and cleared my throat. "I know we were all expecting vows today," I began. "But instead, I have something else to share. Something honest." Nathan tried to grab my arm. I stepped out of reach. I caught my fiancé and my bridesmaid together. 10 minutes ago, behind that door. Gasps. One woman dropped her phone. And before you feel sorry for Brittany, I continued, don't. She knew exactly what she was doing. But what she didn't know, what you all don't know, is that Nathan has a medical condition. One he's been hiding. "Natalie," he hissed. "Stop. It's Jenna," I snapped, "and don't interrupt me again." I turned back to the crowd. Nathan's infertile. Diagnosed last fall. I found the documents myself tucked behind his gym clothes. He never told me. And I never cared. I stayed. I loved him. I looked straight at Brittany. But I wonder if she still will now that she knows. Someone gasped. A few people stood up. Brittany dropped the veil. Nathan went pale. "You cheated," I said, my voice low but clear. "And now you've lost more than a wedding. You've lost me. And everything that came with me." I walked off the altar heels, echoing like gunshots on polished floor. Behind me, chaos erupted. I didn't turn around, because the only direction left for me was forward. By the time I reached the parking lot, my phone had blown up calls from friends, texts from cousins, voicemails from my mother, alternating between horror and pride. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I walked straight to my car, unpinned my veil, and drove to the apartment Nathan and I technically shared. I say technically because the lease was under his name, but the down payment, the furniture, the monthly bills, all mine. When I got there, I found Brittany's overnight bag in the foyer and a half-finished glass of champagne on the counter. Her lipstick, coral, cheap and loud, stained the rim. There were 2 champagne flutes. Only one had lipstick. Of course. I took pictures. I forwarded them to my lawyer. Yes, I had a lawyer. Not because I expected betrayal, but because I was a woman who planned for every possible storm, even the ones I never thought would arrive. The next morning, I froze the joint account, called the bank. about removing Nathan from the emergency card and emailed our leasing office a scanned copy of my transfer receipts and the invoice trail showing I paid for every item in the apartment. It took less than 2 hours to legally prove I funded more than 80% of everything Nathan claimed to own. I sent him the final document with one line, "Your belongings fit in 2 boxes. The rest belongs to me. You have until Sunday." By Friday night, the messages started coming in. "We should talk. I messed up." It wasn't what it looked like. I didn't respond. Instead, I booked a flight. Not to escape, but to attend a branding summit in Chicago I'd nearly skipped to plan the wedding. I arrived with no ring, no husband, and no baggage, at least not the kind that fit under a seat. That's where I ran into him, Noah Caldwell, CEO of one of our biggest partners. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. He was there at the wedding, sat 2 rows back, watched it all unfold. At the summit, he found me standing near the coffee bar. "I wasn't sure you'd show," he said. "I wasn't sure either." He smiled. "Well, you made quite an impression." I sipped my drink. "That tends to happen when people ruin your wedding in real time." "True," he said. Then, "But the way you handled it, that was something else." I raised an eyebrow. "Something good. Something fearless." I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because I wasn't here to explain myself. I was here to win something bigger than a wedding. I was here to rebuild what no one could ever take from me again. The summit wasn't just a conference. It was a battlefield dressed in lanyards and espresso shots. Each session was a chance to prove I wasn't broken. Each pitch, each panel, each moment I stepped into a room was a declaration I'm not someone's ex-fiancé. I'm not the girl in the viral wedding video. I'm Jenna Brooks, and I came here to dominate. Noah kept showing up politely, casually, but never accidentally. At lunch, at the cocktail hour, at the panel on brand recovery. He didn't flirt. He didn't push. He just watched, listened, and once after I'd wrapped a particularly ruthless presentation, said, "If that was your plan B, I'd hate to see what you do when things go right." I didn't blush. I didn't need compliments, but I logged that one away. Back home, Brittany tried to go public. She posted a cryptic message about broken women with too much money and no soul. It didn't go viral. A mutual friend forwarded a screenshot. Her caption said, "Maybe some people never deserved love to begin with." The comments turned on her instantly. One said, "Girl, you hooked up with your best friend's fiancé. Sit down." Another said Nathan cheated on his last fiancé too. "You're just the next chapter." I didn't reply. I didn't share. I just watched the internet do what it always does, devour its villains, one angry comment at a time. Nathan, for his part, tried to disappear. He moved out of the apartment without notice, left behind 2 broken lamps, a moldy Brita filter, and a half-written apology note that ended with "I never meant for it to go this far." I tore it up and flushed it piece by piece. Then I turned to what mattered, my career. My boss, Amanda, surprised me with a chance I hadn't expected. "We're pitching for the Henley account," she said. "Biggest rebrand of the year." "You want in?" I didn't hesitate. For 2 weeks, I buried myself in color palettes, target personas, and digital mock-ups. I stayed late, ate bad sushi at my desk, and forgot to be sad. When we walked into the pitch room, I saw Noah on the other side of the table, not as an ally, not as a witness, as the decision maker. He didn't flinch, didn't smile, just said, "Whenever you're ready." I gave the best presentation of my life, clear, bold, unapologetically brilliant. And when I finished, The room was silent for one breathless beat, then filled with nods. Afterwards, as I packed up my laptop, Noah stopped me in the hallway. "You know you won that account the moment you walked in, right?" I looked him in the eye. "No, I won it the moment I stopped letting people waste my time." He laughed. "Fair enough." He didn't ask for my number. I didn't offer it. Because this wasn't a love story, this was my comeback. And I wasn't done yet. The day we signed the Henley deal, Amanda pulled me aside and said, "You just put us on the map, Jenna. Whatever you want next, say it." I didn't hesitate. A team of my own. And creative control. She grinned. Done. Just like that, I went from the girl who got dumped at the altar to the woman whose name sat in the corner office door. Noah sent flowers, not roses too obvious, not orchids too cold, sunflowers, bright, unapologetic, and unmissable. The note read, "For the one who turned the storm into strategy." I left the bouquet in the common area. Let the whole office see it. Let them wonder. But I wasn't looking for romance. I was building an empire. Then came the police report. It started as a rumor, a whisper over coffee, a screenshot with his name blacked out. But I knew the initials. I recognized the details. Nathan had been arrested, attempted assault, a woman at a bar, too drunk to say no, lucky to escape, a security cam, a brave witness, a case. I didn't celebrate, I didn't post. I just called Erica, my lawyer, and asked, do I still have legal standing to testify about his history? "You do," she said. "Want in?" Yes, because it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about truth, about making sure no one else walked blindly into a house built on lies and lipstick. Brittany went silent, deleted her socials. Someone said she was in treatment. Someone else said she was pregnant. Neither was true. What was true, she was sick. Mentally, emotionally, spiraling. I didn't cheer, but I didn't break either, because by then I'd learned some people set fire to everything they touch, not out of malice, but out of emptiness. And I was done trying to fill holes. They dug themselves. Ella, my niece, once asked me, "Auntie Jenna, do you still love weddings?" I paused, then smiled. I love beginnings, and those don't need rings. That night, I sat in my new apartment, bigger, brighter, all mine, and watched the city lights flicker like tiny trophies. Not for revenge, for survival, reinvention, truth. And I made a promise to myself I'd never let someone else write the ending again. The courthouse smelled like bleach and quiet desperation. I didn't want to be there, but I owed it to the girl I used to be, the one who thought love meant patience, the one who almost signed her name to a future built on lies. Nathan sat across the room, same suit, same slick hair, but smaller now. Diminished. No applause, no audience, just fluorescent lighting and the sound of a judge flipping pages. The woman he hurt testified, brave, clear. Her voice only shook once. When it was my turn, I kept it short. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. "I'm here because truth matters, because silence protects men like him. And I'm done being silent." The judge thanked me. Nathan didn't look up. Outside, I took a deep breath that tasted like closure. Erica turned to me. "You good?" I nodded. "More than good. I'm clean." Back at the office, things moved fast. Our Henley campaign launched to record numbers. I got promoted officially. My name printed on the door. My team picked the soundtrack for our ad. Ella sent me flowers with a note that said, "For my unbreakable aunt." I started getting calls from speaking circuits, how to rebuild after betrayal, female leadership in male-dominated rooms. I didn't say yes to all of them, just the ones that paid what I was worth. Noah and I crossed paths often, at meetings, events, once on the same flight. He sat next to me in first class, looked over his glasses, and said, "How's it feel to own the room?" Now I smiled. Feels like they should have never tried to take it from me in the first place. He didn't flirt, but his eyes lingered. Still, I wasn't interested, not yet. Not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't lonely. I had people who respected me, work that fulfilled me, a city that no longer felt like it had traps in every hallway. I slept through the night. I danced at other people's weddings and never once imagined myself in white again. Not because I didn't believe in love, but because I knew now love wasn't sacrifice. It was safety, consistency, peace. If it ever showed up again, fine, but I wouldn't wait for it. I'd already built everything I needed without it. The more distance I put between myself and the wedding, the less it felt like a failure. It started to feel like a well-timed escape. Sometimes people stop loving you long before they leave. Nathan just left visibly. I started walking again, mornings mostly. Before the city got loud, just me headphones and pavement that didn't care who I used to be. One morning I passed Brittany. She looked hollow. No makeup, eyes darting. A pharmacy bag clutched to her chest. She didn't see me, or maybe she did and pretended not to. Either way, I kept walking. 2 hours later, I got a text from a former colleague. She's back at her mom's. Mental health crisis. "You okay?" I stared at the screen. I hadn't thought about Brittany in weeks, and now she was unraveling. It didn't feel triumphant, just inevitable. Because the truth is, if you build your identity on someone else's foundation, you'll fall when they do. And Nathan was sinking. Word got around that his trial would go public. More women came forward. None from my circle, but their stories sounded familiar. Casual cruelty, quiet manipulation, charm as camouflage. He wasn't a monster. He was worse believable. I didn't speak again. I didn't need to. The evidence did the work. I focused on what was mine. I mentored new hires, launched 2 more campaigns, got featured in an industry magazine under the headline, "The Woman Who Turned Ruin into Reach." My parents stopped asking if I was dating. They saw the way I smiled now, not performative, not polite, free. Even Noah, when we crossed paths again at a charity gala, didn't press. "You look good," he said, handing me a glass of sparkling water. "So do you. You still running the city?" I laughed. No. Just my world. And it was true. My world was small, focused, curated. I no longer collected people who made me feel like I had to shrink to fit them. I had space, breath, choice. That was my real victory, not the exposure, not the headlines, not the courtroom silence, but this, the quiet confidence of a woman who no longer needed to be rescued, because she never really did. Fall came with gold leaves and silence. The noise had faded, no more gossip, no more news alerts, no more updates from lawyers, just space. And in that space, I grew. I redecorated my apartment not because I needed to, but because I wanted every corner to reflect who I was now, not who I was then. The wedding photos were long deleted, the dress donated, the ring melted into a pair of custom earrings I wore to every major pitch. I called them my reclaimed diamonds. One night after a company dinner, Amanda leaned over her glass of wine and said, "I remember when you first walked back in after the wedding. You didn't look strong. You looked dangerous. That's how I knew you were going to be okay." I smiled. Strong is quiet. Dangerous gets things done. She toasted to that. Noah and I crossed paths less and less. Our companies worked well together. No tension. Just mutual respect. Sometimes I wondered if there could have been more. But then I remembered I didn't need more. I had enough. Then came the email from Brittany's mother. Short, formal, meant to inform, not beg. Brittany passed away last week. Complications from her condition. She spoke your name before she went under. I thought you should know. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. Just stillness. Some stories don't end with a bang. They just fade, and that's what she did, faded into memory, into consequence, into a name I no longer had to carry. Later that evening, I took a walk. No headphones, just the city and my breath. I passed a couple taking engagement photos in front of the park fountain. The woman laughed as her partner dipped her low, kissing her neck. I didn't flinch. I didn't ache. I smiled. Not because I wanted what they had, but because I finally fully didn't. And that kind of freedom, that's not healing. That's evolution. By winter, the world outside had gone quiet again. The kind of quiet that used to scare me before I realized it wasn't emptiness. It was space. I filled it with things that mattered: morning runs, new projects, homemade soup, long calls with my niece, and books I'd always meant to finish. I stopped answering questions I didn't owe answers to. Are you seeing anyone? No. Do you want to? Not really. Because happiness no longer came with conditions. It wasn't tied to someone else showing up or staying. It came in the form of peace. I still bumped into people from my past, former colleagues, distant relatives, strangers who'd seen the video. They asked if I was okay, and I'd smile. I'm better than okay. I'm unshakable. The news finally confirmed what I already knew. Nathan had taken a plea deal. Reduced sentence, registered offender, no future left in the city, a face blurred in shame and legal files. Brittany's name didn't make the news. She disappeared without headlines. That was the difference between scandal and consequence. One makes noise, the other leaves silence behind. My therapist once asked, "What would closure look like for you?" And I said, "Not needing it." She nodded. Then you're already there. I hosted my first solo Thanksgiving. No partner, no excuses. Just chosen family, friends, co-workers, my niece, a few neighbors who brought too much wine. We ate, we laughed. Someone dropped a pie. It felt perfect. Later that night, as I stood by the window watching the snow fall in slow, weightless spirals, I whispered to myself, "This is the life I chose. Not the one I was handed, not the one I was promised, the one I carved from ruin with my own hands, and I wouldn't trade it for anything." By spring, even the gossip forgot me, and that was the goal all along. I wasn't the wedding girl anymore, not the betrayed one, not the viral scandal. I was just Jenna again, whole, quiet, dangerous in the way women become when no one owns them anymore. The magazine feature dropped in April, Redefining Power, The Rise of Jenna Brooks. I read it once, then used it to line a drawer, not because I didn't care, but because it wasn't the peak. It was just another mile marker on a road I was building every day. Amanda offered me equity. I said yes. Noah called once, just once. "Still running the world?" he asked. "Only my part of it," I said. He laughed. "Still not interested. Still don't need to be." And he respected that. That was what power looked like now. Not dominance, not victory, just choice. I started teaching part-time branding for women-owned startups. I watched young creatives find their voices. I watched them pitch without apology. I told them, you don't need a partner to be powerful, just a spine and a signature. They believed me. Because I'd lived it. At night, I wrote. Nothing public, just thoughts, truths. Pages only I'd ever read. They weren't for revenge. They were for record. So if I ever forgot who I was, there'd be evidence. One evening, while walking home from a bookstore, a stranger stopped me. You're her right. From the wedding, I smiled. I used to be. Then I kept walking. Because she was right. That woman who stood at the altar and chose herself had done her job. But I wasn't her anymore. I was what came after. Summer arrived without fanfare. No milestone, no chaos, just sunlight through the windows and a calendar that finally didn't feel like it was chasing me. I didn't throw parties. I didn't post updates. I just lived, quietly, honestly, entirely. I took Ella, my niece, on a weekend trip to the coast. We stayed in a tiny rental with creaky floors and salt on every surface. She collected shells. I collected moments, and neither of us needed anything more. One night she looked up from her coloring book and asked, "Do you still think about your wedding?" I paused. "No," I said. "I think about the woman who walked away from it." She smiled like she understood. Because she did. We baked cookies that burned at the edges, watched terrible reality shows, took photos neither of us posted. It wasn't about memory, it was about presence. Back home, I wrote one last entry in the journal I'd been keeping since the day it all fell apart. Just 6 words. This piece, I built it myself. Then I closed the book. Not because the story ended, but because I didn't need to reread it anymore.